7
All right.
o'clock.
And let's start this meeting.
I'll make a motion at 7 o'clock.
I'll second that. Let's start this meeting. We're beginning with the adoption of the agenda. Actually, I'm sorry, calling it to order. Let me get in order here. And the Pledge of Allegiance, we'll go with the Christmas shirt guy.
It's a shirt guy.
All rise.
Well, that's good.
Please
I want to see
face
that.
the flag and with your hand on your heart. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks, Butch. Welcome to all guests.
I'll make a motion to approve the agenda.
Second.
So, all in favor?
Aye.
Oh, you're getting better.
I'm working at it. Staff presentation information. Measures Y and Z, second quarterly construction update, 2012, 2013. Mr. Slade. Thomas.
Oh, you're,
Thank you, Dr. Mannon. Good evening, President
Can't you hear
Warmers, esteemed board members, all the doctors in the house, and thousands of Torrance residents that are viewing along with us tonight. As always, it's a pleasure and an honor to represent the bond management team seated in the audience tonight. You will recognize that the presentation is going to be much shorter tonight than what we presented to you in September due to the fact that we now have 9 of your schools complete in addition to the 4 stadiums. So we'll be addressing what's current. And with that, I'd like to introduce Angel Hosband from HMC to lead you through the status of Towers and Riviera.
Good evening. Let's see, Towers and Riviera. We actually had our community presentations last month, which went very well. Mrs. Reagans, thank you for attending both, and Mr. Wimmers, thank you for attending Riviera. I don't think there were any issues with any of the community members, and they really enjoyed the designs that we presented to them. We are currently at 50% with our construction documents, and we will be submitting our 90% documents to Balfour Beatty to review by the second week of January, or in the third week of January for Towers. And we will hopefully be presenting to the board for approval in the February board meeting. I believe that's it.
short and sweet.
Any questions? Great.
Thank you.
Thank you, Angel. And now Paul Westberg from Westberg and White.
Good evening to the board and new board member. Welcome.
Thank you.
We are the architects for Hickory, Madrona, and North High School. Oop, wrong button. There we go. And we are also having before you tonight and a follow-up an approval of our going out to finalize bid and then to start construction. We've had a lot of different inputs with Balfour Beatty. Charlie has worked day and night to tune this project to a point where it meets some budgets, and I think you'll be pleased about the conversations that we have. We also, at North High School, we are ready in that particular project too to start construction, so we're going to have all 3 projects under construction very, very soon. The Torrance High School, we are going to be back starting in early January, starting back up with the planning meetings again. And as you've heard in previous presentations, the building to our bottom here where the senior plaza is a project area that has been fenced off for a period of time. We've done a lot of investigations. We've come up with some solutions on how to mitigate our concerns on the particular building, a building that was built back in 1919. And also it is a historic registry building. So as we progress to our first phase, which is actually the shoring of the existing building, so it doesn't denigrate any farther. And then ultimately, with appropriate numbers that we're working with Dr. Stabler on, we're hopeful that we have monies during the summer to start the mitigation of what has been decaying over almost 100 years, all right? And we're also giving some estimates to Dr. Stabler and Dr. Mannon pertinent to the modernization of that area, though that's an inappropriate term for historic buildings. There's some R words that we're learning to use along with our historic registry architect. It is an entirely interesting process, a long and arduous path of pulling pieces apart and trying to put them all back together in what the feds require as the method, the appropriate method. So we as an overall team, District, Balfour Beatty, and Westburg White, are learning on a daily basis what it takes to meet the guidelines of the registry that was created back in the late 1990s. And we hope to be able to start reoccupying that building after we get past next summer, if in fact we have enough remaining dollars over the amount of monies that have been already sold in the marketplace. If we don't, then we'll have to be pushing it off to 2014. So we're going to keep our fingers crossed that maybe we have enough monies to do it now, but nobody budgeted this particular item. No, we are budgeted for all of our services up to the point of Torrance drawings being ready by DSA, and then we wait till 2014 for your next funding increment. So, any questions?
Mr. Lee?
Yeah, the main building, I probably the only one around here remembers before it was renovated, since I was in that building in the 70s. When they renovated it, what was it, the middle 80s or so?
I think it was the late 70s, isn't that right?
Late 70s?
Yeah, with the rear exit stairs and all of that. Yeah,
They didn't do a very good job on the inside.
I've noticed that.
Yeah. So the outside, you know, a little stucco made it look a little better in the
Yes.
windows, but certainly the inside. Have we started to kind of peel back those ugly orange tiles in the front foyer?
yeah,
and
those are
kinda
actually
look-
called Maybricks, and I know exactly we've had discussions, and we've had 2 early planning meetings before the discoveries of concerns on the senior patio area. And we talked about that in both those meetings, and there was some discussion by some people in the high school planning group that there might be some very interesting architecture underneath all that 1970s junk
Yeah,
look.
'cause I remember it being different, but
Yeah,
you know,
kind of
high school's a
iconic
blur.
columns and marble and other things. So yes, we're going to tear into that.
There's a teacher there by the name of Pat Zartman who was there when I was there.
Okay?
So he might be a resource because his classroom's been in that building as long as he's been at that school. So
Right.
he was in there pre and before everything was redone, and then obviously after. So he might be a resource,
Great.
at least
We'll make
for
note of
a
that.
memory.
Okay.
But I kind of look forward to how that all's going to end up looking.
Okay?
And the eyes of the community are on that one, I'll tell you that.
I have been told that.
Yes.
Mrs. Reagan?
I just wanted to say, actually, I'm learning the terminology too. And I remember this really clearly, that what we're actually doing is rehabilitating the building.
You are correct.
That is the terminology. Uh-oh, that's what Dr. Mannon told me.
Retrofit.
No, it's rehabilitation.
Rehabilitation. You see, we're still learning.
Uh-oh. See, we're still,
We're still learning.
Now we're getting another R.
well, we're rehabilitating and
rehabilitating.
retrofitting, and we will get the terminology down
yes.
by
Sounds
the
like they've
time
gone
we're
to
done
cruise
here,
and
yeah.
come back.
But it is interesting, because the terminology is entirely different in this kind of a building, so.
That's right.
That's been
That's
a
right.
learning process for all of us. But thank you.
Yes, Thank you.
You realize that 70s look might be popular with people that think that's the look of the era. You understand that you're
Well, I
flying in
mean,
the face of that.
Mid-century architecture is coming back, but I don't think that qualifies as an Eichler house or anything like that.
I think,
So, no,
I think
it's
I
not
will
gonna
make
work.
every
Just-
effort to withstand the arrows being
No.
shot at me over
Just
that
taking the
issue.
counter position is all.
Yes,
Just in
yes.
case.
Yeah. You know, another 100 years, even that might be historically registered.
Very good. We'll wait.
We'll see if we can get that out of there
Avocado
before that
green's
concern
coming
comes
back.
up.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
that's right.
All right, any other questions?
Yeah, I did have one other highlight. So tomorrow is the construction meeting for
That is
these
correct.
3 individual schools, and and people in the neighborhoods have been informed. And there's going to be some busy folks running around to all of these meetings tomorrow evening.
We have
So we can
4:30
begin it essentially Saturday.
Yes.
after the kids leave.
And Hickory is at 4:30. Madrona is at 6 o'clock, and North High School is at 7:30 for those who are watching us on TV. And we will be presenting not the design, but the methodology of how we're going to build this and what would be the impact to the community. Where are trucks going? Where are we going to store the supply yards, and where are we going to have all of that? And Charlie will be the main thrust of that, all 3 of those meetings tomorrow night. Okay?
Pointy end of the spear.
All right. Anything else? Great, thank you very much.
Welcome.
Discussion action items. Anyone want to speak? Okay. So we are now on to approval and adopt resolutions. Do I need to read all these, Dr. Mann?
No, we got the lease back, don't we?
Yes, you actually have a second presentation.
Yes, sorry.
The Hickory Elementary Madrona North High School lease back method. And that is Mr.
Thank you.
All spit up.
Most of this is, you broke it. You broke it.
Good evening. What you have there in front of you is just a tabulation of all the bids that were received and how we come to selecting the bid, the low contractor for the project. Let me see. On the screen there, you have what is basically a summary of what you have in front of you. It comes to total subcontracts are 38 million. There's some cost saving options of about 2 million, so it gets us to 36. And there's on the screen there, you also have in front of you in your package is a list of the cost saving options that we have.
We wanted to present those to you tonight. This project is about 6 weeks late from where our intention was. And the reason for that is Charlie, his staff, the architects, have all looked at this project because it was overestimate. So we've gone through to get as much cost savings as we believe is actually possible without changing the base scope of the project. And what does that really mean? It means that we believe there are no other items we can reduce without changing the scope, which would mean you would need to give us direction, for example, not to do a wing at a school. We don't believe that's acceptable. So this is the best we can come up with from a cost standpoint. So with the reductions that you see before you, that takes it down, the project cost down. The project's still overestimate, but within the contingency for the project. So we recommend that we move forward with the project with those options being reduced from the original scope of this project.
And those options are spelled out someplace?
They're on the board, Mr. Lee, and they're
Oh,
also,
they're in that, okay, good.
Yeah, they should. They're part of your backup there for the item.
right.
Don't go anywhere.
Don't go anywhere, yes.
Aha.
No, they're in the actual board item, yeah.
Mr. Lee, you had some questions?
Yeah, I'd just kind of like to know what all those things are. I mean, repair slurry the parking lots at all campuses, we're not gonna do that, or we're gonna do it differently?
We're gonna do it differently. The original scope was to remove and replace all the parking lots at all the campuses. After going back and looking at those, not all of them need to be removed. There are some of them that can be repaired and re-slurried and restriped.
I'm thinking at least North and Hickory are in some pretty expansive soil, so.
There's some areas at all the campuses, this represents all campuses. But there is some areas at all campuses that can be reduced.
And then the aluminum windows on a lifespan basis?
That's the one I provided you several months ago, that the potential was that we would need to move to that, away from steel frames. Aluminum frames, we're looking at a life cycle of about 25 years on them,
And steel?
almost a lifetime. But you can see it's a fairly significant amount of money that we're talking about. $861,000.
Interior line ductwork? I mean,
Yeah, the ductwork that is being put in was called out to be lined, insulated.
right?
It's not, it's more of a, it's mostly for sound, but considering, it's 125,000, we didn't think it was necessary.
And then the pretty courtyard in the front is all gone?
It would be all gone if you move with this.
Wasn't that a big part of what we wanted to, yeah, I see the architects back there now looking real happy. Wasn't that one of the big things that we had talked about when the design was that we'd have an entrance to North High finally, and there'd be a way to get in there and not get confused and,
It was a part of the original design. You are correct. And that is the amount, should you choose to put back in the project. You can see it's almost $500,000.
Should we choose to put back in the project, that means we actually could steal from Peter to pay Paul, or?
No, it would just mean that the project will be that much more over the estimate if you put any of these things back.
okay, what's the contingency in this?
We are,
What's the contingency amount?
each project's carrying 10%.
Okay, the dollar amount.
I don't have that off the top of my head, but I can get it for you. But each project is, overall, it would be 10%, so it would be
It's $9 million, I think.
roughly 3.8 million,
Okay, so.
split between the 3 sites.
Okay, so currently, we're gonna be into the contingency how far?
I believe you're gonna be in 7 million into the 9 that's allocated.
7 million into the 9?
There's 9 million allotted contingency for these 3 projects. I
For
think
these
you're
3
gonna be
sites.
into 7 million of the 9 million.
Total. So we're gonna be
Correct.
7 million into that 9 million right now.
That's right.
Correct.
And if you add any more of that back, you can see how that will increase it.
Okay, where did we get sideways on this?
You mean, as far as over budget?
Yeah,
There is a lot of scope that is needed to be done that wasn't identified in the front end.
okay.
And that's
Yeah,
from
I'm
the
gonna
drainage
guarantee you
at
Marilyn
Hickory
has no idea what scope means as a new board member.
The work that was scheduled to be done originally, when we got into the campuses, we realized, and the perfect example is that is the drainage issues at Hickory with the box that we have to put in, the underground drainage.
All the last
Expansive
section.
soil at North High School.
Yeah, expansive soil at
Yeah.
North High School. There's a lot of things that we can detail out for you if you would like. But there's, you get into design and realize that there's things that should be done. If you're gonna perform work on that campus, it makes sense that, those items get
But you've
fixed.
already, you're saying that we've already spent 7 million of the 9 million that we had set aside. That will be,
There-
you're pretty confident that's gonna go away.
Correct. That is in the number that you're looking at.
That's
It's a
in the
7
number.
million.
So we only have 2 million to fall back on.
Correct.
So
Well,
if we-
other than he's got, in the
The,
lease back, you've got some stuff built in too,
There's
though.
3 million, roughly 3.8 million that is built into each project. So those 3 projects combined, you have a 10% contingency within
Already.
that 38, within the, not the 38
7
million, but
million over.
the GMP.
Within the 7 million over there, you've got 10% contingencies
Exactly.
already built into it.
Correct.
Okay, so we got $2 million that, in other words, in this lease back thing, after our last experience.
That's part of the reason.
Somewhat,
Unless you run into something there that is gonna be outside the scope of the plans, meaning if you're gonna tear a building down and replace it, yes, that would be outside the GMP.
That's where, that's what, you found 12 feet of burnt wall at
Correct.
Magruder,
Absolutely.
okay?
And you always have that, and we hope that the 3.8 million of contingency covers that.
Okay, so then we still have 2 million.
Then you still have 2 million outside that, correct?
Okay. You know, only because we're borrowing money to do this, and these bonds will be paid off over the next 20 to 25 years, I'd like to have what we do last longer than what we're paying for it, just, even though obviously there's some things that won't. Aluminum windows in a beach environment can be problematic, certainly. And certainly the wear and tear they get in a school site is pretty heavy duty. So, you know, that's something I've got a bit of a concern about. You know, if we want to repair the parking lots and stuff, that's kind of a, you know, that's not a major deal there to me. And then quite honestly, you know, we kind of promised that North High would look like something. You know, Torrance High looks like something. You know, South High has an entrance. West High has an entrance. North High kind of has a corner. You know, and so, you know, I'm just, you know, I was pretty excited that North High would have an identity, you know, because the identity is how that was going to look in the front and everything lined up with the palm trees and everything else. And, you know, granted, we're going to, you know, we're getting contingencies upon contingencies. I know that's being very conservative. But I'm certainly inclined that the administration entry in the courtyard is kind of a big deal to me. That's number one. And number two is I'll probably be dead in 25 years, so they won't be able to blame me. But the aluminum window thing is a bit of a concern of mine, only because I know how they're used. I know how heavily, you know, they're just banged around, and I don't know. I'll listen to my fellow board members.
Mrs. Reagan, you had your light on?
Excuse me, Ms.
yeah,
Reagan,
go ahead.
before you speak, excuse me. We wanted you to have the opportunity to do exactly what you're doing. That's why we set it up this way. And if you choose to add that back in, knowing, you know, the financial piece, you certainly can do that. And that's the way we set this meeting up for you, is to see the overall numbers and also to see what we have pulled out without affecting the base scope of the project. But should you choose to add any of those back in, you certainly can do so. And that's why we set it up the way we did. Excuse me, Ms. Reagan.
Oh, that's okay. My question was, for instance, North presented with these considerations and told that, you know, $500,000 is what the entryway is going to cost. You either lose the entryway or something else.
They have nothing else to lose. That's what it really comes down to. If, you know, if you present that, the only thing that we could come up with is, do you not want to do a wing at the school? Or do you not want to do, which we know they do, would be the underside of the home side of the bleachers, you know, for example.
Yes, please do that.
And that's awful. I mean, you know, let's all be honest,
Yeah,
it's awful.
it is.
Has to be done. We all know that. So there's an additional parking lot that's going in, but you don't have a choice. You know, it's not that they can say, we don't want that parking lot, because DSA is requiring us to put the parking lot in. So they really have no options of where that they had alternates built into the plan that they could say, you know, we don't want that alternate. It's just not there. And it would be something very big to come up with that amount of money. And the only thing we can come up with is, then you tell us not to do a wing.
Right. Well, I just wanted to make the point that when we did pass the bond, it was a sizable bond, but it was only, at that point, about half the money we actually needed, or 2/3 at that point. Now it's probably less than half.
It is exactly that.
Yeah.
You know, going back, actually, Mr. Wormers and I had this conversation.
Yeah.
The actual need that was identified was 500 million. Y and Z combined was for 355. So there were many things within the need of $500 million that certainly aren't being touched with this. And although, you know, we've done some nice stuff at all of our school sites, the 9 that are already there, you know, we've reached the point where we have to have this kind of a discussion. And I suspect you'll be having this same discussion when we bring you the next 2, which will be Towers and Riviera, that'll come up for actually bid. So our intention is, once again, to go through that same process and then, you know, bring it back to you to say, you know, these are the things we think we can pull out without actually affecting the base scope of the project. And that's basically what we promised to do. But if you want to put these other things, the board can certainly do that, and we'll follow you back again. But we're going to be faced with this, and especially the issue because of the great cost of windows. If you remember, I talked about that about 6 months ago. From this point on, we're
Yeah.
going to have those, we'll have to have those kind of discussion on windows.
And I think it's important to understand when we're talking contingencies, remember, we had an overall contingency included in every single school site. That contingency had 2 purposes. Number 1 was to take care of issues that we have here that might go over or whatever. And also, part of the contingency was set aside for those schools that are out in 2017, 2016, 17, and 18. Remember, we put enough money in there to take care of cost increases. So, yes, we have contingency within the GMP, $3.8 million, roughly, that is set aside for the errors and admissions, whether it's the construction or whether it's district. But then the other contingency they're talking about, we're using part of that now. But then another part of that was supposed to be set aside and left out there for the future schools. And that's another part of the guarantee. If you've been in, some of us have been involved in the Independent Citizens Oversight Committee meetings, and we have always said, yes, we're going to go ahead and complete these schools, but number 1. But number 2, we're going to have funding for those schools that come along in 2017 and 2018, so there's enough money to do those.
If
That's-
there's a cost increase.
If there's a cost increase, right. But that's what we're trying to protect. That's why we're trying to keep these as close on budget as we can and taking care of base scope number 1 and then moving ahead from there.
And we have to do that. After the Prop R issues that we had with the last bond, I certainly do not want to see that replayed. Thank you.
Something else too, part of this is deferred Measure R work. So it's just something to think about.
Yeah, and I am, I am glad that Mr. Brown brought that up. Some of you, Mrs. Reagan's especially,